Welcome to the Women Going Big podcast. I'm personally thrilled for this episode. I'm so excited. I first heard Sarah on one of the episodes that I was editing for a client, and I'm like, this is a bad bitch. Like, I need to know this girl. Like, what just, I was blown away. I was blown away. And so that kind of led to me working with her because she's a phenomenal coach, speaker, strategist, and so many other things that I'm going to let her get to in a minute. But I wanted to preface this with the fact that I have worked with you. We are friends, and I just admire you so much. And I'm so glad that you're on the show.
I cannot wait to dig in.
That is exactly what we're going to do. We're just going to jump right in. So, Sarah, how are you going big in your own life?
I'm going big by believing the idea that keeps floating around in my head that I was born to do epic shit and that mediocrity sucks. And if I am really here to, express the stuff that I was born with, that requires some action taking that doesn't feel comfortable always, or that you even feel like you might be doing it right, but you just do it anyway because it's so much in your gut saying go, go, go.
And there's a lot of different ways that I've personally seen you going big. And I want to dive a little bit more into your story and how that has kind of come to fruition for you and how you have just absolutely moved forward without, I don't want to say hesitation because I know we all have that, but move forward without fear. So, Sarah, tell me and our listeners a little bit more about what led you up to this point. How did you decide that mediocrity was not for you? And then kind of maybe how you help businesses and entrepreneurs move through that themselves.
There's only a couple of stories in my life that I know to be one of those defining moments, right? And this whole idea of mediocrity is one of them. And it happened in Pocatello, Idaho, where I was born and raised, and I was in high school. And just like many of the listeners had to do, we were tasked with writing that essay of what do you want to do when you grow up? And I had no idea because at that point in my life, I just knew that I would be Miss Rodeo America. And so I didn't know how to answer that question. And so I remember writing, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. It'll probably have something to do with business. And I didn't know how to spell business. And I had to get the dictionary out to figure out if it had one S or two S's. Right, terrible speller. And so I'm like, I'm not sure. Business. No matter what, though, I know that it won't be mediocre. And I knew exactly how to spell the word mediocre. And it's kind of a word that is weird. There's a little CRE at the end, but it just flew out of my pencil. And when I wrote that at the time, I didn't know how, important that would be in my life. But it's just always been one of those kind of guideposts that says, you know what, you could take this road, but what about all of these other possibilities? And so it's really framed the choices that I've made in my career. I grew up in Pocatello, and after graduating from Idaho State, I worked for the best place to work in Idaho, credit union, Idaho Central, and that was fantastic and had a great career working in the training and development space. And then I was just getting this pull to move to where it was warm. And I went to Mesa, where you live, and I loved living in Arizona and loved my credit union career. Then my life took a transition, met a boy, needed to come to Colorado, that whole story. And the career that I had been following just didn't seem like it was going to be working in Colorado because there were opportunities, but just kind of average ones, right? I could have gotten hired working in a credit union, continuing the same old, but there was something in me saying, no, there's something better for you out there. Something a little more on brand with this whole anti-average, saying no to mediocre. And I took a hard left and went into agriculture. I'd always been a horse girl, but I grew up in an apartment. And so I was definitely not a farmer's daughter or a rancher's daughter or anything. I had no clue. All I knew is that I liked beef And of course, that I liked cattle on the cow cutting side, that horse tie. So I like to say that the rest is history because now I work in agriculture probably 80% of the time. I have some clients that are not ag based, but I am a coach. I do strategic plans. I just started a new plan that I'm so excited about working with the Montana Pulse Crop Committee. So I say go big in the terms of like, I know nothing about lentils and peas and all of this type of crop, but I am all in. I'm going to learn, and it is fascinating. So yeah, career, life. Now I'm moving to Lincoln, Nebraska, because that's going to be the next adventure that's saying, yes, Sarah, you gotta come here. So who knows what it's going to turn out to be, but I have faith that it's going to be epic. So there you go.
Oh my goodness, where to start unpacking that? I think one of the first things for me that I really want to touch on that was kind of just in my face as you were talking was that hard left that you took out of a career that was stable, it paid the bills, it was safe by all intents and purposes. Somebody could have been happy in that career for the rest of their life. It would have supplemented them, it would have served them, but it didn't serve you. But that had to have been scary because did you have any kind of entrepreneur background before you took that hard left?
No, I was corporate Sarah to the core, right? I definitely saw myself retiring from corporate America without a doubt. But when I made that left, it felt like it wasn't so scary because the cattle women had such good credibility, right? They'd been around since 1952 and they all felt like my family, like my grandmas and my aunts and my sisters, honestly. And so the culture and what I knew to be true about farmers and ranchers, I think made it feel less intimidating to make that kind of a shift. Quite honestly, that the people just made it feel like, yeah, it's going to be all right. They're going to take care of me. It's going to be fine. They've got horses. They've got cows. They're going to be fine.
So not only did you make the shift to entrepreneurism, which that in itself is a crazy shift, but you put yourself in a brand new industry also.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was terrifying. I remember going to my first cattle industry meeting and they're like, you came from where? The looks. I was just like, okay, thank goodness they were kind and they let me stay in the room. But yeah, it was crazy. And I was just so thankful that people saw in me the desire to learn, right? Because if you show up with a willingness to be a sponge and to ask questions and to see why things work the way that they do, people love that. Right? If you show an interest in their world and get jacked up about it, like that energy is something that makes people feel good and they want more of it. And so that's something that has been, I think, one of those principles of leadership for me is like just show interest, right? I don't know if you've ever heard of this book, but there's an author by the name of Keith Ferrazzi, and it's Never Eat Alone. And in that, he says that you should always be far more interested than trying to be interesting. Right. And so in that like brand new world, I just turned on the interested piece and it was easy, right? Because it was again about the people that I'd already grown up admiring and always wanted to be a part of. And then just the complexity, right? From policy to the environment and production to all of the innovations. It just was fascinating to me. I couldn't turn it off and I still can't turn it off.
And I do want to just take a quick opportunity because this is a podcast for all types of women from all different backgrounds. I don't think since the last time we talked that I told you my really big, scary goal for this podcast. And I can't even believe that, and I can't. I've tried every which way to say, no, Krista, I've run the numbers. It's not attainable. Like, I've tried to talk myself out of this. I want to share 1 million stories of women on this podcast.
Oh my gosh, girl, giving me goosebumps. I love it. And you're giving me vibes. I have a girlfriend, Cami, who actually inspired me to be a coach. And she, oh my gosh, you guys, you're giving me all the feels because I remember her telling me, she's like, Sarah, I want to change the lives of 1 million women. And I was just like, that's what we need. Instead of these like podunk little tiny ideas of, I'm just going to impact a couple of women, which, I mean, great. I mean, any life change is fantastic, but I want to actually hang out with the people that want to go and make those massive ripples around the world. And so, heck yes, high fiving. We need more of that kind of energy in the world, because let's face it, we need it. Like, we've got some major opportunity to make improvements here.
Yes. So 1 million women. And I just know along that journey of doing this that other women are going to hear stories like this where they might be scared, or they might think that they're holding themselves back from going into a new industry or learning something about something they don't know, right? So in this, I'm talking about the ag world. So we probably have a lot of women listening, and even a lot of guests that have no connection to the ag industry. But here you are, where you were just interested and admired the people in it, and that was enough for you to break into it yourself with no background other than that you admired and liked it. So I just want that to be a testament to anybody listening, that you can break into something that you have no ties to because you're interested in it.
Absolutely. You don't have to be born into it. You don't have to be, laden with all of these money resources, right? You just have to have that attitude of, oh my gosh, tell me more.
Okay. All right. I love that. Now that I made that, I just had to get that in there because I feel like it's important.
Million.
I know, it's crazy. Okay, let's move on, because I talk to a lot of coaches. I've met a lot of coaches. I have worked with several coaches, and I've never worked with a coach like you. I think that you set yourself apart in the way that you not only work with people, but the way that you talk about people, and the way that you talk about the changes that you want to make and your values. And I think that comes to a ridiculously strong sense of branding for you. And I want to talk a little bit about like how you even started, because you use some big words: anti-average, epic shit, hope dealer. Like, those are not light value words that you see in a branding book, that when you work with a branding strategist, they're like, oh yeah, here are some words. Those are not words that are in that booklet. Can you kind of walk me through what the idea of how your brand was born? Let's do that. Can you walk me through how your brand was born? Because it is not average by any means. And I'm dying to know how you even got there.
Man, what a gift to hear you say that to me about my brand, because that's what you would hope, is that it feels deep, right? When I set out to create my business, I was so worried about, like, what is my brand name going to be? Like, is my business got to have some fancy name, and what should my logo look like? And those are just such hard choices. But I knew a couple of things, right? I knew that there had to be horses that were a part of it. And so, like, my mark has a horse head in it. Like, that's the primary part of my mark, right? And it also has a hummingbird. And animals are a big part of my business. You know that. I leverage the wisdom of horses in a lot of the corporate work that I do, which I think is really cool. I also draw really directly from the power of nature and spirituality. And so I believe that the animals bring strong messages, and it's not an accident that I love horses or that hummingbirds are interesting to me, right? And so I was like really noticing what's showing up for me, what's power for me, what's influence for me, what also is trust, right? And you talked about those values, those core values. Did a lot of work before I even started building my brand to try to figure out, well, what the hell am I good at? Right? What is it that I value? What don't I value? Right? What are those passions that I want people to feel? And so those strengths, values, themes of passion was where I started, and it's what I do with all my clients. And then from there, I went to people that I trust. Right? I went to my friend Walt Poirier. He's a Lakota Indian friend of mine that just lives here in Denver, and I loved his art, and he had an agency. And so I said, all right, Walt, here's what I want. And I trusted his interpretation of what I was telling him. And yeah, so I love the mark. The fierceness and the delicacy of the hummingbird is the reason why I have that. right? If you've ever seen a hummingbird fight for food, like they are badass, but they're also so tiny and they're just delicate as all can be. And I love that range of dynamic, right? I want to be super soft, but then I want to be fierce as hell, right? So I love that. And then the horse and the hummingbird are in a circle, right? And the medicine wheel is in a circle for a reason, right? Like everything is connected. I believe in that very emphatically, right? And so I wanted to see that represented. So I just know who I am and I wanted it to be seen in the marks, in the language. Epic shit was just something I actually saw on Pinterest. And I was like that moment where the sun came out, I was like, whoa, like, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. And I tried to trademark it, funny enough. And at that time, you couldn't trademark curse words. But apparently things have changed. But now I don't even care because like it's cool. There's bottles of wine with epic shit, and people send me pictures on the internet all the time of things that they see that say do epic shit. And I love it. It's like, yes, we can all love the epic shit. I don't have to own it.
I love everything about that. And one thing that I really admire about you too is that you don't live in a box. You don't work in a box. Your brand's not in a box. And I don't want to say that I think a lot of people are living within the safety of the box that they've created, but sometimes it's hard to see outside of that. And it's hard to, it's not comfortable. And I know we have personally had conversations about living outside of our comfort zone, but you really work with your clients to get outside of that. How can you set yourself apart in what you're doing? And sometimes that's looking at your goals again. Sometimes it's looking at your offerings. Sometimes it's looking at your business structure. For somebody that has a business or is considering a career change or a life change, and they have to be brave and step outside of that box, what is something that you want to tell them?
If you had the thought that you should do it, then you should do it, right? That again, I think we try to logically think through all of these big decisions like career changes, like, should I change my structure or my brand or whatever? But if you're having that kind of a curiosity ping repeatedly, right, that is a gift. That's not something to naysay. That's not something to logically push down and be like, not today. The timing's not right. It doesn't feel perfectly comfortable, whatever. It's like, that is happening. That's a cue. And I think we numb ourselves to those little gifts, those little, inspirations that come through because we've been taught, think through it. And so I really encourage people to marry that mind gut connection, that heart, mind, body, spirit, all of that is there at your disposal. And so turn up the volume on those intuitive hits, right? Let that logic take a little bit of a breather for a second and be like, I got you. I know you're trying to keep me safe, but I'm figuring it out over here. And yeah, just quit naysaying your own brilliance, because that's the part I love about coaching, especially loving coaching people like you, is that you just hold the right space, right? You've got the answers inside, right? I'm not going to tell you anything that you don't already know, right? So you just got to hold that space, let that brilliance come out, and then follow it, right?
Yes. And that is something I know we've had so many conversations where I've told you hey, I have this thing that keeps popping up. And I think one of the things I admired the most was that you never told me don't follow that, or you never discouraged me from following that path or that idea, but it would have been so easy for you too. And it's so easy for many people because you could say, oh, this idea just kind of popped into my head. It's just an idea, right? But my biggest thing is you had that idea for a reason. And it took me a long time to allow myself to be that's there for a reason, whether it's for me to act on now or whether it's for me to act on 20 years from now. I don't know if I told you this or not, but I have started a seed garden in my journal where all of my idea seeds go. And I don't know when I'm going to bloom them or when they're going to grow, but they all go in a single page in my journal. And I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if one of them will come to fruition tomorrow or in 20 years, but they're there. And now when that thing happens, I can go back and be like, I planted this seed 10 years ago in my journal, but that takes practice. So I guess my question for you is, for somebody that, because it takes practice, right, to notice those seeds when they pop up, or those ideas. It's another thing to nurture those. So for somebody that maybe is having those regular seeds of ideas, whether it's one idea or 10 ideas, how would you recommend them starting to sort through which one of those to follow?
What a good question. Yeah, because not every great idea you're going to execute. And just because you had it doesn't mean that, you have to do anything with it at all. I think that it's the ones that like give you the most energy, right? And the ones that feel like the most meaningful, right? Why do you want to do stuff? Not just to do stuff, right? You want to do the stuff that has the deep root. I also, at the same time, think like sometimes we have to follow the ideas that are just simply fun and have no logic at all to them, because that fun then sparks something completely brand new, right? Because you created this space for yourself to think in a brand new way. And so, yeah, I think you just have to just go with what feels right in the moment. And the riskier, sometimes the better. And I think you also have to know yourself too, because sometimes you just have to like move, right? And like, don't worry about like if you really feel like you need to do it or not, because like sometimes you just need the discipline to plant the damn seed, right? Go and do it. You can't just keep collecting forever and ever and ever, because then you're just a hoarder, right? So at the end of the day, I want to wrap this one up by saying, give yourself some kind of a measurement. And I am on a huge lead and lag measure kick lately. And I think so many times, especially when we're high achievers, we like to look at that end goal. I want to have 1 million women that I've reached, right? That's a lag measure. But instead, what are those things, those activities that if I do them regularly, even when I don't feel like it, if I do those things regularly, I bet they're going to pay off to the lag. And so in order to reach a million women, what do you have to do? Well, you have to like record podcasts. You have to publish things, right? You have to have incredible guests that you love and have quality conversations, etc., right? And so I would put some kind of a lead around, well, what are the types of numbers that you're putting up? What are the quality numbers? Like, so those leads. So in this, like the seeds, start tracking. When was the last time you let yourself plant a seed? So just track the action, right? Just like with basketball, how many times did you put the ball up? Right? How many times did you like take an idea and run with it? Even just for an hour, right? You don't even have to like see it all the way to the end game. It's like, I just took it and I held it and I massaged it and I thought about it and I played with it and I changed the shape of it a little bit and then I set it down. Like, that's a win.
The word that keeps coming to mind as we're talking about this is art. And I don't think that enough people think that their ideas are art. And that's kind of a relatively new idea to me as well. I would say just within the last 6 months to a year, where I've allowed myself to think that the things that I'm creating is art, and that I'm an artist in my own right through business and through the projects like this that I create, because it touches people like art. Like, I hope that these stories with these 1 million women will touch and affect somebody else that listens to them.
And that is art, isn't it? Like, it is. Like, I would love for the listeners to consider how they define art right now, right? And just to notice it, because it is a typical things like paintings and sculptures and photography. Yes, but what else? Mm-hmm. Who listening can picture that artful storyteller? That person who their home, you walk into it and it is just art. It's an experience, right? So I love what you're bringing to the conversation today with this idea of like art. And if you're a creative, you're a maker, you are a marketer, you are any kind of an entrepreneur, I believe that you absolutely are creating art. So what are some of those practices we can bring into business that are very artist-like? Being curious is one of them. What could that look like?
And putting things out there without thinking about the repercussions or thinking about how it's going to be perceived by others.
Who has to like the artist?
And sometimes not even the artist.
If somebody else likes it, great.
Well, and sometimes you put something out there just for the sake of putting it out there because you needed to get it out, right? Like that seed that maybe you followed and then you're like, okay, great, there's no purpose to this, but I made it. And who cares if there's purpose or not?
You hope that there is. Like I think most artists do. My best friend sent me a reel yesterday by Joni Mitchell. And I am a big music head. Like I love all types of music. And she, to me, is just iconic in her songwriting abilities. But she was talking about her creative process. And back in the time that she was creating, she was talking about things that a lot of people didn't talk about. And she said that she got feedback from like Johnny Cash and Waylon and some of those guys that were like, dude, like this is, and she was like, you know what, if my people can't listen to my music and see themselves in those lyrics, then like what was the point? Right? So like, yeah, I think you should create art for yourself. But if I'm talking leadership in the business and how I'm here to like why I'm on this earth, it's about service, baby. And so I better, when I'm creating this art, have some faith and trust in my own abilities to know that this inspiration is coming through so that I can bring something amazing into the world for somebody else. Even if it's just one, right? If a million, great. But like, I have to have faith that it's not just for me, right? That it needs to come out so that, man, it can come and like do some awesome shit in the world, right? So yeah, I kind of think yes for yourself, but I want to serve the world too.
So I always like to ask, obviously I have a vast range of women on the show, and I like to ask other women what they think is a common tie, a common value, a common trait that all women, regardless of their walks, share with other women. What is the string that ties us all together?
Man, you're coming with the hitters today. Dang, I love these types of questions. We're the creators, right? We're the heart. And we're the healing, I think, that the world knows we need. That might sound kind of out there, but that's like the core, I believe that, like we're the creators.
And I do think there's so much truth to that. And there's power in us. And that is something that I love exploring on this podcast. And I love empowering women who come on who might think, oh, I'm just another coach, or I'm just another business owner, or whatever that I'm just statement is to you. I want people to know that it's so much more important than that.
I'm just the damn matriarch. I'm just the damn creator of the rest of the world. I mean, that's holy shit. That's pretty freaking powerful. Well, and I have to say, the horses piece, right? When women are questioning their power, just look at nature and all the powerful female energy that's out there, right? In the horse herd, who runs the pack? Who runs the herd? It's the lead mare, right? And again, not by accident, right? And so when we start to worry about like our abilities and can we do this, we just need to take a breath and look back and be like, all right, what is all this beautiful matriarch energy showing me, right? Because she is fierce, right? And most of the time she's chill, right? Her job is to maintain energy, look for predators, right? Make sure that her people are cool, right? And she's having a good time. She's eating, enjoying that clover, that joyfulness, right? Only worried about the moment right now, right? She's not worried about yesterday and all of the things that she wishes that she would have said in the moment, right? She's not projecting into the future of, oh my God, I hope that I make the million impact, right? No, no, no. She's right here, right? What's she doing? Looking out for her peeps, right? She acts. If she needs to act, she'll be there, no doubt, right? Because she knows she can trust herself. She trusts the people around her, her herd is protecting her too, right? And the boys, they look sexy. They're off in the, we need them too.
How much power is there, though, in that when you look at it from that standpoint of everywhere around you in nature, that the women are the power source? And for me, as I was just thinking of, how cool is it that my goal is to empower 1 million women to know the power of their story? And what is going to be the butterfly effect of 1 million more women recognizing that power?
I mean, what possibility? Like, that's the hope dealing right there. I got to go on a field trip last week with my kid to International Town. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea what International Town was going to be like, other than that all the kids had been assigned different countries. Mm-hmm. And so we got there, and I have to tell you, like, middle schoolers, sixth graders, I was not that excited about how they were going to behave. Like, I was like, had my armor on. I was ready for battle. Right? And we go there, and it's fantastic. They have all these different regions, and I was assigned to China. My daughter was assigned to Japan. She was a reporter. I was making sure all the manufacturers were manufacturing their pencil boxes. But as I'm walking and like watching all of these kids, like, these girls in middle school were like amazing, far cooler and more polished and smarter than I ever was as a middle schooler. And I was so pleasantly surprised at how these young women were leading, right? They were showing up, and it was freaking phenomenal. And so I came home with a different view, and like thinking of that ripple effect. I'm like, there are so many women who are showing up in beautiful, strong ways that, like, you can see it in these sixth graders. And it's just like, oh my gosh, so exciting. And like, think about in just 10 years what they're going to be doing, and like your podcast and that work. We need this in our world, and it's exciting.
It is so exciting.
And I have to say, on the flip side, we came home that day and we watched Tombstone, one of my favorite movies of all time. And we'd seen it, many times before, but there was a little snippet of when they're in the town and the women suffragists come rolling by in their wagon. It's just equal pay for equal work. And Brighton and I looked at each other, and I looked over at Chris, and he just kind of chuckled and shook his head. And I just kind of sighed and got sad. And he was like, still fighting for it, huh, girls? I was like, and Brighton looked at me, and she was confused, and she was like, what do you mean? And it was like the worst to have to look at her and be like, it still is not equal pay, honey. And although, like, I thought she knew that, like, we'd seen the Barbie movie 1,000 times, right? She could recite the whole damn, speech. It hadn't connected, and she was like devastated, Krista. She's like, that's seriously, like, women don't get paid and the same? And I was like, no. And she's like, what about teachers? Like, it does not matter the career, sister girl. And that is disgusting. And so, I never used to really be so caring of that, but like that becomes more and more. And so, like, I want some of those big social issues to be addressed by these million women and by the women that I'm coaching, because this is just crazy time. So thanks for letting me go there for a hot sec. We need to change it. Like, come on.
Yes. And that's the thing, right? Is like empowering women to take that first step, right? Like, what is that butterfly effect for other people? What is that seed? Is if you want that change, you have to be the change. I'm pretty sure there's a quote. There's a quote somewhere. You have to be the change that you see in the world. Yeah, I'm ashamed that I don't know who said that. Somebody's going to come out.
Well, you knew it. You knew exactly. Be the change you wish to see in the world, right? And it's true, though, but how many people just sit and they're poking their little finger out? I wish that Krista would do it. What are you doing? You're sitting on the couch.
I keep bringing up this book that I'm reading, but it's called Courage is Calling by Ryan Holiday. And it's a short book. It's like it was one of my travel books that I got at the airport coming home from a trip. And actually, I think it was my Japan trip that I bought 2 books, and I'm reading them side by side. And the entire premise of this book is, if not you, then who? And that's the entire book. It is you need to have the courage because you have power within you that somebody else doesn't, or that somebody else doesn't have. Only you have the power, and your power is unique. Nobody else has it.
And I think that it's super important to recognize that no matter if you want to change the lives of one person or a million, like the number doesn't matter, right? It's just the fact that you're out there doing some change, right? I work with the Montana Farm Bureau in their ACE leadership program every year, and we bring in a guy named Bruce Vincent, and I love him. He's a logger from Libby, Montana, and he's an advocate, right? And he teaches people how to be better advocates for the industry. And logging was one of the first industries to get hit with advocates or activists, right? And so he learned the hard way what not to do with these activists for a lot of years. And so now he comes and shares those hard lessons learned. And one of the number one lessons that I will never forget from Bruce is he said, you know, you want to go and make some change in the world? The first place that you better be looking is in your own backyard. And you think that you're a grassroots kind of person? Prove it. And when I heard him say that the first time, I was like, yeah, of course. And then I came home and I started to think, and I was like, well, how am I making any change in my own backyard? Because I'm busy flying all across the country, going and serving in, you know, Montana or in Nebraska or in, you know, Arizona. But I was not really looking for ways to serve here in Colorado. And it was a good slap in the face for me. I was like, shit, I better start doing stuff. Right. So now I volunteer at school and I work actually in Colorado with producers here now. But it was like, shit, like, that's right. If I truly want to be a leader, like, you got to invest at home. One person, your neighbor, then the person that lives next to them, and the person, you know, whatever. But yeah, your scope doesn't have to be a million, because that freaks some people out. Other people are like, you're like, hell yeah, make it too. But just do it. You just got to like show up. You get the calling. Yes, please.
Well, I always leave time at the end for you to bring anything else up that may have been on your heart or floating around in that pretty head of yours during our conversation. So, is there anything else that you would love to leave our listeners with?
Communication is code for leadership. Leadership is code for communication. So you have these big ideas, you want to go and make big change, then really double down on your communication, right? Whether you want to stand on a big stage or you want to work one-on-one, doesn't matter. But if you really double down on your listening, you really work on your storytelling, you really work on being, you know, that person that knows their brand and what that message is that they want people to hear loud and clear. It's simple, right? We make everything really complex, but leadership is leadership is leadership. It's really simple. Break it down. And just remember, you were born to do epic shit. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. That's what I want you to remember.
Amen, sister. Yes. I love that that's how we wrapped up this conversation. I feel like we could probably talk for hours. But for the women listening that loved this conversation as much as I did, where can they connect with you further and learn more about you?
I love Instagram, so I'm always there. Sarah J. Bohenkamp and sarahjbohenkamp.com.
Perfect. Well, those links will be in the show notes. And for any ladies listening out there, first of all, if you have a story to share, I want to hear it. So you can apply to be on the show, or you can apply to have your story featured on our blog. Those links are also in the show notes. And Sarah, thank you so much for going big, because the lives that you're touching will truly benefit from knowing you. And I just know me personally, my life has been enhanced through knowing you. So the more people that I can show your bright light to, I'm more than happy to do that. So thank you for being on the show today. And to our listeners, thank you as well. Thanks for tuning in to the Women Going Big podcast. And we'll catch you next time. Bye, guys.